Should you wait for the Xbox Series X Plus? Let's discuss. Just a reminder, if you take a look down at the description below, I have links for all sorts of Xbox gear. I've been talking a lot about the ultimate wired Xbox controller by 8BitDo. That's down there as well. You can buy it through Best Buy. If you want to get in on this new generation of Xbox cloud gaming, I also have some links for some Samsung TVs that support the Xbox Game Pass app that they're coming out with. So guys, we're almost approaching the 2-year mark in the Xbox Series X and S life cycle. And because of that, I want to take a moment to reflect on all the good times that we've had over the past 2 years, and maybe some of the bad times. So let's start off with the console itself, the hardware, the meat and potatoes. One of the exciting things that always comes along with these new consoles is just the possibilities. What can these things do with this new tech? And when the Xbox Series X and S launched, Microsoft made it a huge talking point to say this is the most powerful console, it's the speediest, it's the beefiest, it's the best. 2 years later, how does that actually work in practice? Well, for me personally, I'm pretty pleased with what my Xbox Series X is capable of. I'll start off by saying I'm not sure if we've seen the true potential of the Xbox Series X, graphically especially. And with every new game that comes out, it's basically just an upscaled version of what you can play on the Xbox One. That being said, I really enjoy how my games look and run on the Xbox Series X. I know there was a huge controversy when Elden Ring first launched, and Digital Foundry did a video where they found that, oh, on the Xbox Series X, the game runs at less than 50 frames per second. But I'm willing to give my Xbox Series X a pass on that specifically because I know that optimization for Elden Ring out the gate was a problem for all platforms, not just the Xbox. At the time, if you remember, the best version of that game was actually the PlayStation 4 version running on the PS5, not the PS5 version, the PlayStation 4 version. I also know that the Series S gets a lot of hate. Again, that was a huge talking point when Dying Light 2 came out and people were saying, oh, we can't get to 60 frames per second on the Series S. I don't know if we're ever gonna be able to do that. And then they turned around and they said, actually, just kidding. We just needed to do a little bit more work on it to get that 60 frames per second on the Series S. So hardware-wise, when it comes to running games, I think both of these consoles are in a really good spot. For me personally, I was most taken aback by the loading times. Now, this is something I've talked about in the past, but that is what really felt next gen to me over these past 2 years. I first really noticed it when I played through Psychonauts 2 for the first time, and in between levels, whenever there's a loading screen, you'll see Raz falling into this psychedelic abyss that's always churning. It's very like hypnotic almost. The animation for that loading screen wouldn't even play sometimes. It would just blip and then blip out, and then I was in the next moment. With this next gen patch for Assassin's Creed Origins, there was no time to act silly and run around in animus limbo. So graphically, speed-wise, I'm pretty pleased with the Xbox Series X. And one other feature that I'm kind of up and down about is quick resume. I know this is something that they've been able to utilize thanks to the solid state drive, and honestly, I feel like it's really useful for single-player games. I feel like no multiplayer games should ever go into quick resume, whether it be Halo multiplayer, Chivalry 2, I've been on that a lot. There's always some sort of problems. There's also been a lot of talk about how fast your Xbox Series X boots up. And recently they just added a feature to the latest Insider build where it cuts the time to boot up your Xbox in half. I especially thought that was pretty cool because that tells me, hey, even though you have the hardware that it ships out, the Xbox team, the engineers over there, can still fiddle around with it via some updates to squeeze just a little bit more juice out of it. That was very encouraging to see, and I can't wait to see what they do in the future. In terms of hardware sales, now when this thing launched back in 2020, the Xbox Series X, the Xbox Series S, we were coming off a disastrous generation, the Xbox One. And I say it's disastrous, I know a lot of you had Xbox Ones out there, but let's be honest guys, we sold about 55 million Xbox Ones compared to PlayStation's 114 million or something like that. So all eyes were on the Xbox Series X and S to see, hey, how are these things gonna sell? Is it gonna be better than last time? And it turns out it's looking pretty good, guys. The more numbers we see, the clearer it is that this is the fastest selling Xbox ever, even compared to the Xbox 360 generation, the peak Xbox time. Xbox still hasn't overtaken PlayStation 5s in lifetime sales, but the gap is not as wide as that previous generation I was just talking about. So yeah, a year and a half in, almost 2 years, Xbox I feel like is in a good spot. Let's get to the good stuff, the game. When the Xbox Series consoles launched back in 2020, there was no games to speak of, and we were thinking, oh man, this is gonna be a whole repeat of the Xbox One generation. Halo Infinite was supposed to launch alongside the Xbox Series X back in 2020, but Microsoft said, psych, we're not gonna do that, and now we know why. But a year and a half later, almost 2 years later, how are they doing on that front? Well, through 2021, they did do a little bit better. Believe it or not, Xbox Game Studios Publishing won Publisher of the Year award because the crop of games that they put out were combined the highest rated on Metacritic. That includes games like Microsoft Flight Simulator, Psychonauts 2, Forza Horizon 5, and then of course Halo Infinite. And that was a really great string of months for Xbox back in 2021. And we were looking forward to 2022. Oh my gosh, we're gonna have all these bangers like Redfall, Starfield. They're gonna be the biggest games of the season. And then we got to 2022 and our hopes were dashed. We were like, dang it, those games are delayed. And what came to fill their spots? Nothing really. So from an Xbox Game Studios perspective, has not been great over these past 2 years or a year and a half. But for me personally, I've been playing on my Xbox regardless of the fact that they haven't had any first-party games come out this year. I poured hundreds of hours into Elden Ring on my Xbox, and I've been playing a lot of stuff on Game Pass. If we're looking at just exclusive, just Xbox Game Studios production, I would give Xbox like a C+ over this time, but that's just the reality. 2023, that's gonna be our year. Let's move on over to Game Pass though. How does Game Pass stack up since these consoles launched? The last time we heard about a concrete subscriber count number was this past January. We can assume that Game Pass, as of right now, has at least 25 million subscribers. I'm sure it's grown since then, since we've heard that number, so maybe it might be closer to 30 million, but it has at least 25 million subscribers. I was a little concerned because there were reports coming out saying that the gaming division in Microsoft hardware sales were down, software and services were down, but apparently Game Pass, the growth of Game Pass offset those numbers a little bit, so that's kind of encouraging. I assume it's going well, but over the past year and a half, almost 2 years, how does it stack up now compared to then? We can highlight a little bit that period of time that I was just talking about, holiday season 2021, where we got Psychonauts 2, Subnautica Below Zero, Forza Horizon 5, Halo Infinite, all back to back to back, and that was amazing for Game Pass. But Game Pass also had some misses. Remember back in February, everyone was excited for Crossfire X. I know not everyone was excited for Crossfire X, but I was willing to give that game a chance, especially because it was really the only Xbox exclusive since Halo Infinite. But long story short, that game was a huge letdown. It was an okay game, but it was really buggy when it was added to Game Pass. There were certain things that they would promise would come with this version of the game that's on Game Pass, like one of the campaigns that people couldn't play for a couple of days, even if they downloaded it previously. And honestly, even though there are no Xbox Game Studios games coming for the rest of 2022 to Xbox Game Pass, well, that excludes, of course, Grounded, which is getting the full release in September. I think people are sleeping on Game Pass for this holiday season, especially October. High on Life, A Plague Tale Requiem. So I think Game Pass subscribers out there have plenty to do between now until the end of 2022. My overall rating for Game Pass, B+. From what I heard, there is a certain game coming to Xbox consoles this year, and by extension Xbox Game Pass, that Xbox can't even talk about right now because of a certain exclusivity deal that another platform has with that company. But from some things I've heard, that game is going to be coming later this year as well, with a big content patch and some optimizations for your Xbox Series X and S. Now, when the Xbox Series X and S first launched, this was not on my radar, honestly. Streaming games, that was foreign to me, a foreign concept. I was not down with it just yet in 2020. And what started out as a novelty feature, kind of this extra bonus thing that no one really cared about, Xbox, through hard work, smart moves, and perseverance, has grown the cloud gaming division into something that could potentially be a pillar for the platform going forward. I'll be interested to see how the Xbox cloud gaming division grows going forward. Overall, on the cloud gaming front, I would give it like a B- almost, only because the experience is inconsistent right now. And of course, Xbox has been making headlines because they're adding in Discord voice chat. We already spoke earlier about the faster boot up times. They're continually adding new audio settings. They boosted Microsoft Edge a little bit on both your Xbox console and on PC. So yeah, these little updates underrated, but they go a long way in improving the Xbox user experience. Now, some of them, it's like, why did it take you so long to add some of these things? The audio stuff I was just mentioning, it took them forever to finally add in the ability of when you plug in a headset, then have the sound playing through that to mute the device that your console's connected to. That's something that PlayStation had for a long time. They also had some questionable moves on these insider builds, like the ability to upload game footage and screenshots directly from your console to Twitter. I know that was a very confusing time for a lot of people. They were saying, why would they take that out? They were saying they were trying to improve the DVR experience, game sharing experience. What's going on? So yeah, again, over the past year and a half, Xbox updates have had their ups and downs. I would say this goes pretty heavy on the scale, like a B+ to A, I would say. Next up, let's talk about some of the accessories, mostly the Elite Series controller. Why is it taking Xbox so long to release a Series 3? We've been rocking with the Series 2 for what, 2-3 years now? And yeah, it was nice that they made that controller compatible with the Xbox Series X, but if you have a new console, a brand new next-gen console, it stands to reason that you would release a new Pro version of your controller. Also, a lot of people weren't happy with that Elite Series 2 controller, especially considering what they spent on it. So all eyes will be on Xbox when they apparently release this Elite Series 3 sometime in the near future. Jess Corden says maybe by the end of this year. Next thing I will say is that I have the headset that is the official Xbox stereo headset wireless version. And at first I was saying, man, this headset is really cool. I really like it. But as time goes on, first of all, the mic quality is not very good. It's not the worst thing you're ever gonna hear in a matchmaking lobby, but it's nothing to write home about. And while the sound quality is good, if the batteries get low, you kind of start to hear some, I don't know, audio artifacting, if that makes sense. But I will say, I think it's fairly priced, sort of. It runs $100. Honestly, I would bring that price down to like 90? In a weird way, over the past year and a half, almost 2 years, my favorite Xbox accessories have been third-party ones. My 8-bit Do controller, I know it's 8-bit Do, but my 8-bit Do controller, I am just rocking with that with every single game. It is like my go-to controller. I can't explain it. So all that being said, where do I want Xbox to go in the future? I want to go to the top, baby, all the way to outer space. How are they gonna get there? Me, personally, I would start by releasing some of these games that they've been sitting on. And yes, I want to see these games come out for Xbox, and I want to see them do well, not only for the clout purposes, guys, but for the Game Pass purposes. I want them to beef up Game Pass, man. I also want Xbox to go for the killing blow, maybe somehow find a way to close this Activision Blizzard deal by the end of the year, and somehow get all of those IPs that they have onto Game Pass. For me, it's all about Game Pass, really. And for a lot of you out there, I feel like that's the drawing factor for Xbox right now. That's really the only thing I can point to and say, that's why Xboxes are selling well, because like I said, there's not a whole lot of exclusive to go along with the platform right now. But yeah, I want that Pro version of the console. I'm really interested to see, because traditionally, these consoles, these refreshes, they're a little bit smaller, they're a little bit slimmer than the original model that comes out. I don't know how you make the Xbox Series X slimmer. All things that could be really useful and enjoyable in these new crop of Xbox games. Anyway, guys, that's all the news I have for today. Follow me on Twitter. We'll see you in the next video.